We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph in Meseches Sotah. This is Sotah Daf 41a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara was discussing the reading from the Torah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, and the Gemara said, how could it be that the Kohen Gadol was sitting down, but you're not allowed to sit down in the Azara? And the Gemara answers that it all took place not in the Azara, but the Ezras Nashim. And so the Gemara is now in the middle of asking from a Tosefta. The Tosefta is discussing the king reading during Hakel. The first opinion, the Tanna Kama, says he read and he was in the Azara. And the second opinion, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, says no, it's in the Har HaBayis. And the Gemara now brings a pasuk, Vayikra bo lifnei harachov asher lifnei shar hamayim. Again, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says he read while he was in the Har HaBayis, as it says he read in front of the rachov that was in front of the shar hamayim. Rashi says, Vayikra b'Sefer Ezra, Ksiv. This pasuk is in Sefer Ezra. And the point over here is, Katani mi'ol rabbanan be'azara hayukorim. It says over here that they would read in the Azara, and the same should be true by the Kohen Gadol. So how can you say it's the Ezras Nashim? And to that the Gemara says, no, here also, Amar Rav Chisda says, the Ezras Nashim. What they mean when they say the Azara, they actually mean the Ezras Nashim. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, V'korei acharei mos v'ach ba'osar. He reads from the section of acharei mos, and he reads ach ba'osar. And the Gemara says, Urimini, we have the following contradiction. It says, Medalgin b'navi v'ein medalgin b'torah. It said in our Mishnah that we're skipping from the section of acharei mos to ach ba'osar, but it says you're allowed to skip when you're reading from the Navi, but you're not allowed to skip around when you're reading from the Torah. And the Gemara answers, Amar Abaya says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan b'chdei yifsok hatorgamon, kan b'chdei lo yifsok hatorgamon. It depends when you're skipping. Are you skipping so that it's going to be a situation of the amount of time that it takes the translator to translate, or is it going to be more than that amount of time? If the skipping is going to be more than that amount of time, that's when it's a problem. But the Gemara says that's not true. Va'allah katani. But on that we learned medalgin b'navi ve'in medalgin b'torah. It says again you can skip by navi, but you can't skip by Torah. V'ad kama medalgin. And when you're allowed to skip, how much can you skip? Ad kedei shelo yifsak hatorgamon. Only enough time that it's going to take for the Torgamon to translate. It can't be longer than that amount of time. Mechlal de v'torah klal lo. That implies that by Torah you're not allowed to skip at all. Only by navi we say. By navi we say you can skip and there's a limited amount of time. By Torah it's not allowed at all, and we're talking about by Torah. And the Gemara says, Alamar Abaye, rather Abaye says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan b'inyan echad, kan b'shnei inyanim. It depends if you're skipping within one topic or if you're skipping to a different topic. And the Gemara says, V'atanya, we learned in a brisa like this as well. Medalgin b'torah b'inyan echad, you are allowed to skip in the Torah as long as you're in the same topic. Uv'navi b'shnei inyanim. But by navi, you're even allowed to skip if it's two different topics. V'chan b'chan b'chdei shelo yifsak hatorgamon. But in both cases, again, it has to be the amount of time that the Torgamon can do his translation. It cannot be a hefsek that is longer than that. Ve'in medalgin min navi lenavi. You're not allowed to skip from one sefer in navi to another sefer in navi. Uvinavi shel shnei masar medalgin. But in the navi of the trei asar, you could skip around within trei asar. That's all considered like one navi. Uvilvad shelo yidlag misof hasefer letchila. So as long as you don't skip from the end of the sefer to the beginning. And Rashi explains misof hasefer letchila. So you're not allowed to go from the end of the sefer to the beginning. The point is lemafreya. You're not allowed to go backwards within the sefer. You can only skip if you are going forwards. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'golalas ha-sefer Torah," and he rolls up the sefer Torah, "Menicha b'cheiko," he places it in his lap, v'chulu, etc. And he says that more than what I read here is written in here, and then he reads the last section by heart. And the Gemara says, "V'chol ka'achlama." Why does he do all of this? Shelo lahotzi la'az al sefer Torah, so that there shouldn't be false rumors that are spread about the sefer Torah. Rashi explains, "V'chol ka'achlama lo lomar lahem." Why does he have to tell them that more than what I've read is written in here? Shelo lahotzi la'az, shelo yomru parsha shu korei al pei naksuvabo. That way, so that they shouldn't say that the parsha that he's reading by heart isn't written in the sefer Torah. If it's sefer meshubashu, maybe they'll say that it's a sefer Torah that has errors in it. So that's why he explains, no, it really is written within this Sefer Torah, but I'm reading it by heart nonetheless. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Again, the section of Be'asor in Sefer Bamidbar, he reads by heart. And the Gemara says, why doesn't he roll the Sefer Torah to that area and he should read from the Sefer Torah? And the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Huna bar Yehuda, Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Huna bar Yehuda says that Rav Sheshes says, Lefisha in Golan Sefer Torah, but Tzibor. The reason is because we don't roll the Sefer Torah in the Tzibor, in front of the public. And Rashi over here explains, Lefisha in Golan Sefer Torah, but Tzibor. This is Rashi, this is the Mosaf Rashi. Rashi explains we don't roll the Sefer Torah, but Tzibor, Mipnei Kavod Tzibor, like what we explained earlier, because of the honor, out of respect for the Tzibor, Shu Mitzapin V'domen L'kach. They're going to be sitting there waiting, and they're going to be waiting in silence, so therefore it's not appropriate to roll the Sefer Torah while everybody has to wait. And the Gemara continues, V'leisi Sefer Torah acharina v'likri. So why don't we just bring another Sefer Torah and read it from a different Sefer Torah? And the Gemara answers, Rav Huna bar Yehuda Amar, Rav Huna bar Yehuda says, Mimnei pegamo shel rishon. The reason we don't do that is because people will say there was something wrong with the first Sefer Torah. Rav Shimon ben Lakish Amar, Rav Shimon ben Lakish says, L'fi she'ein mevarchin bracha she'ein etzricha, because we don't want to have to make a bracha that's not necessary. If you're going to bring another Sefer Torah, you're going to have to make another bracha. But the Gemara says, but are we really concerned that people will think that there's something wrong with the first Sefer Torah? V'yamar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, but Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha said, Rosh Chodesh Tevis shechol lios b'Shabbos, if Rosh Chodesh Tevis falls out on Shabbos, maybe shalosh Toros, you bring 3 separate Sifrei Torah, v'koreh, and you read from the 3 Sifrei Torah, achas me'inyan shel yom, v'achas shel Rosh Chodesh, v'achas b'shel Chanukah. One of them has to do with the parsha that you read from, generally speaking. One of them is Rosh Chodesh, and one of them is Chanukah. You bring 3 Sifrei Torah in such a situation if Rosh Chodesh Tevis falls out on Shabbos. So you see, we're not concerned that people are going to think that there's something wrong with the previous Sefer Torah that was used. And to that the Gemara says, Telasa Gavri Betlasa Sifri Leka Pagam. If you have 3 separate people reading from three Sifrei Torah, no one's going to think anything's wrong. Chad Gavri, but here if you have one person betray Sifrei reading out of 2 Sifrei Torah, Ika Pagam, then there is a concern that people will think something was wrong with the first Sefer Torah. And the Gemara continues with the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, Mevarech aleh shmona brachas v'chulu. Then he would make 8 brachas, and we explained those brachas in the Mishnah. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Mevarchen ala Torah kederech shemevarchen bebeis hakneses. The Birchas HaTorah is the same formulation of the bracha that we make in the shul, V'yal ha'avoda, V'yal ha'odah, V'yal mechilas avon ketiknon. And the formulation is the standard formulation in terms of the bracha of the avodah and the service, and the bracha of hodah, the bracha of thanks, and the bracha of the forgiveness of sin. Ala mikdash b'fnei atzma, V'yal kohanim b'fnei atzman, Al Yisrael b'fnei atzman, V'al Yerushalayim b'fnei atzman. Then you make a bracha on the Beis HaMikdash, an independent bracha, on the kohanim, an independent bracha, on Yisrael, an independent bracha, and on Yerushalayim, an independent bracha. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, V'hashar tefillah, then the Kohen Gadol finishes up the rest of the tefillah. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hashar tefillah, the rest of the tefillah is as follows. Tchina, Rinu, V'akasha, Sha'amcha, Yisrael, Tzrichen Livasha. It's a supplication and a song and a request that your nation Israel needs to be saved. V'chosem b'shomei tefillah. And he concludes the bracha with shomei tefillah. Mikan va'elach, and then from that point, kol echad v'yechad mevi sefer Torah mitoch beso. Each individual brings a sefer Torah from his own house. V'korei bo and reads from it. V'chol kachlam. And what's the reason for this? Kedei laharos chezuso l'rabim, in order to show its beauty to the public. Rashi says, Mikan va'elach la'achar shegamar Kohen Gadol likro parsha bebirchoseh. After the Kohen Gadol finishes, he finishes reading from the parsha with its brachas. Kol echad min hatzibur maybe sefer Torah mibeso la'azara. So every individual from the congregation brings the sefer Torah from his house to the azara. The kasavar ein erev hotzah Yom Kippurim, because we hold over here that there's no issue of hotzah carrying on Yom Kippur. Inam Yerushalayim dalsosen neulos balayla, or you could say that Yerushalayim, its doors are closed at night to ma'arvin eskula, and there's an erev for the entire city. Laharos chazuso shall sefer Torah v'noyev, to show the sefer Torah and its beauty. To Amar Mar, because the master said, Zakeli v'anvei hisna lefanam b'mitzvahs b'sefer Torah no b'tzitzis no. There's an idea of having a nice sefer Torah, nice tzitzis, and so over here that's the idea. They bring their sefer Torah and they show its beauty to the public. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Parshas HaMelech Ketzad, the parsha of the king that the king would read at the mitzvah of Hakil. How did that work? Motzoi Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag B'Shmini B'Motzoi Shvius. At the end of the first days of Yom Tov of Sukkot, in the 8th year, and that's following the Shemitah year, Osen Lo Bima Shalates, they made for him a wooden platform, Ba'azor in the Azara, V'yoshevel, and he sat on it, Shenemar, like it says, Miketz Shavashanim B'moed V'gomer, again at the end of 7 years, at the holiday. Chazan HaKnesses Notel Sefer Torah V'nosnu L'Rosh HaKnesses, the Chazan of the Knesses, of the synagogue, would take the Sefer Torah and give it to the Rosh HaKnesses. Rosh HaKnesses Nosnu L'Skan, V'Askan Nosnu L'Kohen Gadol, and the Rosh HaKnesses gave it to the Vice Kohen Gadol, and the Vice Kohen Gadol gave it to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol Nosnu L'Melech, and the Kohen Gadol gave it to the king. V'Hamelech Omeid U'Mekabel V'Korei Yoshev, and the king would stand up and receive it, and he would read it sitting down. Agrippas HaMelech Amad V'Kibel V'Kara Omeid. Agrippas HaMelech, he stood up and received it, and he read it while he was standing. V'Shivchu Chachamim, and the Chachamim praised him for this. And when he got to the pasuk which says that you can't place upon yourself a non-Jewish person as a king, Zolgu Ein of Demo, so his eyes flowed with tears. Amrulo, they said to him, Altas Yore Agrippa Agrippus, don't worry, Agrippus. Achinu ato, you're our brother. V'korei, and he would read from the following parshios, mitchilas Eila hadvarim at Shema, he'd read from the beginning of Eila hadvarim, Sefer Devarim, until Shema, u'Shema v'hoya im Shamoa, and then he'd read Shema, and he'd read the parsha v'hoya im Shamoa, Aser ta'aser, Kisachala la'aser, u'Parshas HaMelech, and he'd read the parsha, the sections of Aser ta'aser, and Kisachala, and Parshas HaMelech, u'Brachos u'Klolos, and he'd read the section of the Brachos and Klolos, at Shagomer kol ha'parsha, until he finished the entire parsha. Birchas shekohen gadol mevarech osan, hamelech mevarech osan. The same brachas that the kohen gadol would make, those were the same brachas that the king would make. Elashenosin shel regalim tachas mechilas ha'oven. Except that he would switch out. He would make a bracha of the holidays instead of the bracha that the kohen gadol made in Yom Kippur for the forgiveness of sin. That bracha would not be made over here. The bracha mechilas ha'oven would not be made, and instead it would be the bracha of the regalim. And Rashi explains that Gripas hamelech melech Yisrael hoya mizaro shel hurdis. He was a king of Israel, but he was from the children of Hordus, V'hu shenechra Beis HaMikdash b'yamav. He was the one that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in his times. Zol goein of demos shamikra hazeh poslum and amalcha. So his eyes flowed with tears because this pasuk said he was disqualified to be the king. Achinu ata, and they said, you're our brother, she'imo mi Yisrael, because his mother was from Yisrael. And Rashi continues, V'korei mitchilas Eila hadvarim ad Shema. He reads from the beginning of Sefer Devarim until Shema shebeVeschanan, which is in Parshas Veschanan. U'Shema v'hoyem Shema yedei diluk. Then he goes from Shema to v'hoyem Shema. That's through skipping. U'misham medalig la'aser ta'aser. U'misham medalig v'korei kisachal la'aser. From there he skips to aser ta'aser. From there he skips to kisachal. U'vrachos u'klolos, and he reads the brachos and klolos. U'misham chozer l'mafreya. From there he actually goes backwards. V'korei asim alai melech, and he reads this parsha, the Parshas HaMelech, asim alai melech. Shema kabbalas malchus Shemaim. Why does he read all these various sections? Rashi explains that Shema is Kabbalas Malchus Shemayim, V'hoya im Shamoa Kabbalas ol mitzvahs, and V'hoya im Shamoa, that's an acceptance of the mitzvahs. Keda Amar bePerak Sheni de Brachas, V'chein Brachas uKlolos, Kabbalas Brisas shel Torah, and the Brachas and Klolos, that's an acceptance of the covenants of the Torah. Umashmiel Rab Maser Ta'aser Kisachal La'aser Mimneshu Zman Osiv. The reason why he's reading Aser Ta'aser and Kisachal La'aser is because now is the time of the gathering of the crops. Umatnos Aniyim, it's the time to give to the poor. V'afrashas Trumas and Maisrus, and the time to separate Trumas and Maisrus. Now, even though the section of the Parshas HaMelech is actually an interruption between Aser and Kisachala, Kores Eila Yachad, he wants to read all of these together. Shelo lahafsik b'Maisrus. There shouldn't be an interruption when he's reading about Maisrus. V'yachar kach korei Parshas HaMelech, and after that he reads Parshas HaMelech. Now, even though here he's skipping around and it's the amount of time, it's more than the amount of time of the Torgamon, but the king didn't have a translator anyway, so it doesn't matter about the amount of time. There is no translating after the king read, and so therefore the issue of of skipping around and trying to keep within the amount of the time of the translation is not an issue. Again, we said earlier the Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur, so he makes 8 brachas. The king also makes those brachas after he reads Shel Regalim, but again he makes a bracha on the Regalim instead of the bracha of Mechilas Avon, Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, meaning he makes the bracha Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, Mevarech Tachas brachas Shel Mechilas Avon Shabiyam HaKippurim. That's instead of the bracha of Mechilas Avon, of forgiveness of sin that's made on Yom Kippur. And the Gemara says, Bishmini Salkadaitach. It sounds like from the Mishnah, Bishmini sounds like the 8th day of Sukkot, but that can't be because we said it's Matzah Yom Tov Harishon. It's after the first day of Yom Tov of Sukkot. So what does it mean, Bishmini in the Mishnah? And the Gemara says, Ema Bishminis. Rather, what it means is, Shminis, it's actually the 8th year, meaning it's the year after the Shemitah year. And the Gemara says, V'chol hani lamali, why does the pasuk have to go through so many phrases to identify what year this is? And the Gemara says, Stricha, we need all the phrases in the pasuk as follows. Because if the pasuk just said after 7 years, you might say count from right now, and it's going to be every 7 years. We wouldn't say it refers to the Shemitah year. Even though it doesn't come out on Shemitah. So Kasav Rachmana Shemitah, that's why the pasuk says Shemitah. Because of Rachmana Shemitah, have Amina Besov Shemitah, and if it said Shemitah, I would think that you're supposed to do the Hakel, the reading at the end of Shemitah. Kasav Rachmana B'Moed, so it says it's at the holiday, the holiday that takes place after the Shemitah year. Because of B'Moed, have Amina Meirei Shasa, and if it said the holiday after the Shemitah year, I might think that means Rosh Hashanah. Kasav Rachmana V'Chag HaSukkos, so the pasuk says Chag HaSukkos. Because of Rachmana V'Chag HaSukkos, have Amina Afilu Yontav Achron. And if it only said Chag HaSukkos, I would think maybe even the last day of Yontiv of Sukkos, what we call Shmini Atzeres, Kasav Rachmana Bevo Kol Yisrael. So the pasuk says it's when all of Klal Yisrael comes, and again that refers to Matzah Yom Tov Harishon, the end of the first day of Sukkos, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Aleph Amud Beis.